Hello there, this is Cridical from Cridical Media, just taking a look at the 2015 hardcover release of Superman, The Men of Tomorrow, from Geoff Johns, John Romita Jr., and Klaus Janson and Laura Martin doing the inks and colors. And what we usually do at this channel is give you an idea of what to expect whenever you come across these books in the wild. So we go over the exterior, some bonus material, art and plot points, and then a brief review at the end. But I'm going to do the review part a little bit more in depth this time, a bit more comprehensive. As for those returning to this channel, you've probably seen this book cameo a few times, but at least after doing the comic book tour video, the one recent to this, I did get a few comments and messages about why I always keep bringing this book up, so I guess it's only right to do this now. So, at least going back to the tradition of this channel, in terms of the hardcover here, or the exterior, yeah, we have this excellent, very imposing image here from all three creatives. Definitely love that silhouette angle. Very appreciative of that. In terms of the spine, very traditional to the New 52, but a very interesting point is that it's missing the numbering. So I guess that's kind of a sign of how unique this story or this narrative is. And of course, your typical fare on the exterior. And like with other New 52 releases, it's pretty bare in terms of, just the bare cover of it. So yes, it's pretty much a matte finish, embossed titling, as with the spine, and nothing really going on the back. And in terms of bonus material, we are getting a lot of cover designs. I guess they did really try to gear up this book to be something special. So yes, Romita himself does a few of the variants himself, but as you go through it, and by the way, probably one of the most popular of the set of images here, as with this one, I definitely like this one with the, I guess, homage to the Spider-Man lifting up the machines. I'm sure Superman's done it before too. But there's a particular one here, yeah, from, there we go, Jason Pearson. This image, I remember when I saw it at the comic book shop back in the day. It was very imposing too. But I find it interesting that the Batman Who Laughs, which comes out like few years after this, what's the word? Yeah, he almost has a lot of elements from this design, so I've always found that interesting. But yeah, beyond that, you just have some sketch work, profile work of Ulysses and Superman here. I think one of Cleric as well. But otherwise, yeah, not much else going on the bonus material side. Now for art and plot points, and I guess the reason why I like this book so much, it basically serves as a reflectionary piece for Superman. So like even Sherlock Holmes had that story, The Greek Interpreter, where that happened, where it took someone else to come into the light, to really kind of see your flaws or your vices and virtues and how well they measure up to others. So I feel like that's what this book kind of serves as. And the literal character, the literary device, is Ulysses himself, Neil Quinn as he's also known. And his story is pretty much an analog for Superman. It's just flipped, where it's now a human who is sent out into the unknown and somehow gains powers because of the transit. So yeah, instead it's his family here, two scientists working on extra-dimensional energy, and at least when he was born around that time, some sort of accident happens at the lab. They think they just ended the world. So they're so fearful that they send their child into the unknown through a ship, except instead of going through space, it's going through interdimensions, and they end up in the fourth dimension somehow. And I guess the process imbues the child with energies and powers, and thus you have Ulysses, the character. But now flash forward to today here, and yep, here we go with some sort of obelisk flying over Metropolis, destroying things. As usual, Superman there to save the day. And yeah, you're given this red herring enemy, Cleric. A typical big bad for Superman to fight. But even he seems to be struggling with him until Ulysses pops up and they have their double whammy. I love this image, by the way. And outside of just the introductions and discovering that Neil had no idea Earth was still around, yes, we kind of kick off at least the beginnings of this story here. Now, as you're going through the book, Superman himself is always trying to help Neil out by, helping him, and by proxy, helping himself vicariously. trying to get him reacquainted with his family, kind of reflects on Superman here just the same. And I like how they do this constantly. You'll always see like a Superman profile here. But ultimately, where things start to pick up is when Neil starts to notice this revolving door aspect of the world where, sure, you can't save everybody, and sure, Superman, of course, promotes don't kill anyone, find another way. But he just keeps seeing like this revolving door aspect. And I like how they have these banters and, legit dialogue between them. But yeah, of course, Neil is going to fly off. He keeps seeing how the world keeps proving himself right. So eventually he just gives up and offers maybe humanity to come back home with him to the great world, as he keeps calling it. And this is probably the best part of this story. So it brings up this concept of self-awareness, free will, and choice. And it really does make you wonder, like, who is really in the wrong when you think about it? Now, yes, I will say Superman does save the day. But I guess there's an ultimate price here. Because, yeah, he's offering folks to come home with him, but he's not telling them the real truth that something bad's going to happen if you come with me, ultimately. Or there's going to be some sort of heavy price to pay. But I love the imagery and I love that silhouette use. It happens quite a lot in this book. It's probably one of my favorite aspects, so awesome stuff there, Romita. But yeah, it just comes to a battle of wills, and to the point where Superman just knows something's off. And I love the whole concept of how he uses his parents against him in that sense. But yes, there is a point where you notice Superman does kind of overstep in this book. And yeah, he kind of gets checked. Man, I love that image too. But yes, probably my favorite part of this book is the big climax where, as I mentioned, these themes of free will and your choices and also guilt come to a heavy price or heavy toll at this point. Because this book, it's one of the few books where you kind of see Superman in a negative light. And even he himself kind of notices it by the end of the book too. Essentially, it gets to a point where, yeah, he eventually convinces Neil to do the right thing. It's funny, Neil has a lot of similarities with Silver Surfer. He kind of acts like the Herald. But anywho, yes, eventually Superman convinces him to save the day, but without thinking things through, that another way that Superman's always talking about to avoid killing people, it's ironic because he actually makes the biggest mistake in that sense. And yes, spoilers if you haven't heard it already, but Superman basically causes genocide. He convinced Neil to help him, but he clearly must have known that by helping him or not assisting him in the best way, look what could have happened. The risks were a little too extreme. And yeah, he ends up causing mass genocide. He destroys Neil's homeworld. And I just love this fury and rage fight here, like how many pages it goes on for. It's pretty damn intense. So intense that Superman gains a new superpower. But throughout their fight, sure, they're fighting in space, so Superman can't talk in space, but you'll notice that throughout the fight, Neil's constantly talking to him, and Superman's not even trying to defend himself. As I mentioned, it's one of the few times where you actually get an idea Superman's legitimately thinking of a huge mistake that he has to bear. And at least by the end of this story, you can even see it here where he doesn't even see Neil as a bad guy. He even says it right here. Ulysses isn't the villain. And I guess that's because if he is the villain, so is Superman. Because they're both guilty of the same crime at that point. Or even an equally grievous crime. But what I do like is that even also at the end, even though Clark is trying to apologize, there's no way you can for what happened, right? So I love that realistic expectation from Neil here. But also that heart-wrenching moment where at least Neil still has his family, his parents, and he's legitimately remorseful. You know, he wishes to at least make it right. But, yeah, of course, what's done is done. And even Superman here watching it, he can't help but feel it. So that's what I like about this story overall. Very unique in that sense. But another unique thing is when he learns his whole solar flare power, at least going outside of that deep dive there. At least when he does the whole solar flare thing, one of the few outcomes of the story is when he uses it, he kind of becomes a regular human being because it uses so much of his energy. I definitely love this book because at least it introduces so many different things for the character. And also, like I said, anytime a character gets a chance to reflect upon themselves, it helps them just grow even more. So I don't even really fault Geoff Johns for writing it the way he did, where Superman can commit something that serious. But at least in that sense, at least it can have that grain of salt too. Because it does lead into the epilogue story here, Before Truth. I'm not saying it's a necessary read, but one of my favorite parts of this book is because Superman, as I mentioned, he just learned that new superpower. One of the funniest moments in this book is when he uses it, he finally can get drunk for the first time. And apparently he's a huge lightweight. Like 2 beers and he's done. So I love that little banter, that little bit of comedy. Nice little Easter egg there. This actually came out around the same time as Superman Unchained. So Superman Unchained was more the action thriller version, whereas I always felt that Men of Tomorrow was more of the thought-provoking story. It's one that I always think of, and it's probably one of my favorite Superman stories of the last 20 years. But at this point, it's not so much about my opinion. Hopefully you've come across this, and I wouldn't mind hearing your thoughts down below just the same. Y'all folks take care, and enjoy the rest of your day.